Welcome to Inside the Noise by Guitar Center, where we interview the artists, the leaders, and the innovators in the music industry. I'm Gabe Dalporto, CEO of Guitar Center. Let's go inside the noise.
Hey everybody, Gabe Dalporto here. We got a great conversation today. With Inside the Noise, we've been speaking with a lot of music industry insiders, everything from CEOs to the major manufacturers, all the way to legendary artists and up-and-coming artists. Today, we have a different story, and we're going to talk with Dave Maddux. Dave worked at Fender from, I believe, 1974 for over 40 years, and he basically did every single job in the entire company, building guitars, launching factories, teaching other people to build guitars. So he has this incredible knowledge of what it takes to build a legendary and iconic instrument. And he now works for Guitar Center, and he works in our repairs organization in Hollywood. And so now he gets to repair some of the most iconic instruments in the world, and he gets to see legendary musicians, legendary instruments, and bring them back to pristine condition.
I've got to work on some of the guitars that I built,
which must
20, 30 years ago.
Must be an incredible full circle. Dave, I'm so happy to spend some time with you here and also just kind of show off the skills you've developed over a career and have been able to bring to Guitar Center. But maybe just in your own words, give us a little bit of your story.
Well, first off, I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. That was it. I had to have a guitar after that. And so I got a guitar that Christmas, and along with a couple of other friends that I had in junior high school. And so naturally we had to make a band, and we started a band, and we got pretty good, and we started playing all the local clubs and that kind of stuff. And one of my bandmates got hired at Fender in about 73. And then 74, I got hired there also. He got me a job, and I started.
So how'd you get a job at Fender?
Well, I applied just like, just regular job application process, and got the interview, and they hired me to paint guitars.
And did you have to have any skills, or they just trained you?
They trained me.
Okay.
And so I started painting guitars. I put the polyester base coat on the guitar bodies, and we had to paint 4 racks a day. Each rack had 44 guitars on it, 4 rows of 11.
Wow.
And so I got.
Let me do the math there, but that's like 160.
Yeah. A
A
lot
of guitars.
For a while after I started there, I couldn't open my car door with my left hand because it screwed the muscles up so bad. Because the guitars, you had to take them off a rack and put them on this thing. So holding them, you got a guitar body out here, so you're holding it, so all these muscles get all torn up.
So everybody knows tennis elbow, right? But now we have a new syndrome. It's guitar elbow.
But for like 2 or 3 months, I couldn't open my car door. I had to open it with my right hand. But that all went away. And after a couple of years of painting bodies, they needed a new tune tester on the guitar line.
Mm-hmm.
And the tune testers, what they do is they take the guitar after it's been assembled, and they do all the adjustments, setup, neck bow, bridge height, all those kind of adjustments, and actually make it into a playable guitar.
Mm.
And they send it down. So those people all have to be musician level, have to at least be able to play a couple of chords and make sure the guitars function. So I did that for quite a few years. And then I went to the end of the line and became the inspector, QA inspector. So after doing QA and the guitar line for a few years, I went to the amp line. These were all people somebody would leave and they would need somebody to replace.
Yeah, and you're just stepping in.
So I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So I worked for a couple of years doing the amps, and then I went to the piano line.
Oh, wow.
Did the Rhodes pianos. So I can basically rebuild a Rhodes piano, because when the Rhodes pianos came down, the supervisor of the piano line, his philosophy was, I don't care if it works as long as all the parts are in the box. That was his philosophy.
That's terrible.
It's terrible because he was a non-musician.
Yeah.
But he was put in there because they wanted numbers. They wanted production.
This was the CBS years.
This was
what
CBS
year was
era.
this?
This was 77, 78.
So, you know, people who know
before 80.
their Fender history, CBS bought Fender in 65,
Yes.
right about then. And
They hold it for 20 years.
and over time, I'd love if you could just tell us a little bit about some of the challenges they faced, because those were kind of like the dark years a little bit for Fender.
Well, CBS, the people in CBS, they were in New York. So they had nothing to do with the Fender factory itself. All they were looking at was spreadsheets with numbers on them.
Yeah.
And so their main goal, increase the numbers, because it was a popular product and it was selling like crazy. So we got to make more of them. And so that was, CBS would always default toward lower quality if it meant more production numbers.
Mm.
They would make those kind of decisions. And the people on the line were always kind of fighting against that.
Yeah.
So the piano inspectors learned how to rebuild the pianos at the end of the line. You know, during the inspection process, we would make and tweak, drill new hole, move everything around so the pianos played great when they left us. So that's what we did for the piano line.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's such an interesting business lesson. You can, as a business owner, you can almost always make more money in the short term by reducing quality, cutting corners, and almost always in the long term, it's going to hurt your business.
Well, when they brought the new company, when the new president took over the company and CBS was out of the picture,
Yeah, that was
they
85.
did that. They relied on quality. They wanted to make a good product that was going to sell well, and they knew that by doing that, they could raise the prices.
Hey, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We've actually been really overwhelmed by the response so far, so thank you for that. We have also noticed that a lot of you haven't subscribed yet. We have incredible guests coming up. I'm not even allowed to tell you who they are, but trust me, you don't want to miss this. So hit subscribe. That way you don't miss an episode. Now back to the program.
So tell me about that transition, right? So that was about 1985.
Yes.
Tell me about the transition.
Okay, the transition was CBS sold the company and they sold the building. And so we went from a 285,000 square foot building. We found a small building in Corona that had it had a spray booth. That was the main criterion for getting that building, because we had to have a spray booth with the permit to spray. And so it was 65,000 square feet. So a lot of stuff,
Wow, way smaller.
a lot of stuff from CBS went into storage. We had a big storage building that we got also. So we were doing about 12 to 15 guitars a day. I was building
In the new building?
Yeah, in the
Down from
hundreds a
Wow.
day. We used to do sometimes 200-300 a day.
So company got bought, downsized, many
downside.
multiples.
There was only 4 of us working there at the factory.
4 people in the Fender family.
Four people. 4 people doing the manufacturing. Now we had a warehouse crew. The warehouse crew was working in the warehouse. They were still shipping out product that had been produced under CBS. But as far as manufacturing, there was only 4 of us.
Wow.
And we started, and so we were building guitars mainly from leftover CBS parts. We had to make our own necks, but we had a bunch of CBS bodies that were left over. So we put together bodies and necks and built the first batch of guitars out of the Fender factory. Was that combination of CBS and Fender.
So how did you scale back up?
We just kind of started hiring people.
And this is in a totally different, how far away was it from the original factory?
About 30 miles.
30 miles, okay. So maybe not the same people.
No, it was definitely not the same people. The factory that you moved into had been a shoe factory. They had been making these plastic shoes. I can't remember what the name of them are, but there's these weird plastic footwear. So a lot of the people that had worked in that factory, we hired some of them to come over and work for us, because a lot of it was trainee level. At that point, we were training people how to build guitars. We were starting from the ground up.
You're rebuilding Fender from the ground up.
Yeah, basically.
And you're one of 4 people left in the world building Fender guitars.
Yes.
Dave Maddux, everybody. Keeping the brand alive.
Keeping it alive. So we leased the building next to us. Had been the shoe factory. They ended up moving out. We leased that building, which was about 130,000 square feet, and we moved a lot of stuff in there and started actually making real manufacturing.
Okay.
You know, we brought in machinery. They bought, you know, the big machines that they needed, and they had purchased some of the machines from CBS.
Mm-hmm.
They brought some of those in, you know, like the big machines for making body spreads and that kind of stuff. And we actually started manufacturing, ramping it up. So it went from, you know, 12, 20, 50, 100, you know, it was pretty, within, you know, a year, we were making hundreds a day.
Wow. And so what changed with the culture with the new ownership?
It wasn't so much, it was more defaulting to the guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the people running the show were guitar players themselves. And so they understood the importance of not just having all the parts in the box.
Yeah.
They understood the importance of actually making it work.
Just focus back on your customer.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what we did. And Dan Smith, who was part of the program there, he had come from Yamaha, and he came up with the idea of let's set up the criteria. So me and a guy named Eddie Yoon, we wrote up the criteria for Fender guitars. So we put in writing specifications that the neck bow can be this, the nut height can be this, the bridge height can be this, et cetera, et cetera. Went through all the parameters of the guitar and put them down in writing so that they could be duplicated. So we could give it to somebody and they
So
can
now
go
it's
and,
repeatable.
yes.
Yeah.
And everything is the same, consistency. Before at CBS, it was kind of a feel thing. When you did a guitar, you cut, it feels about right.
Mm-hmm.
There was no numbers tied to it.
Wow.
Dan Smith came in and said, okay, bone nut height, 20 thousandths, you know, action height, 12 thousandths. You know, he put tied numbers to it to make it repeatable and exact. And that's why Fender guitars now are pretty damn good.
Yeah. So fast forward a bit, you go from like totally retrenching to now building a quality instrument. And now imagine technology has changed quite a bit. You know, if you think about a modern Fender guitar and a modern Fender factory, like what is different now from maybe what it might have been 50 years ago, 60 years ago?
Well, now we're using a lot of, you know, digital technology as far as, you know, the wiring and the pickups and all that kind of stuff. And we're getting stuff more standardized,
Mm-hmm.
so that the numbers are the same all across the board.
So just a lot more consistency of
Yes.
quality. And how do you think that translates into, like, if you pick up, you know, a 60s era Strat or Tele and you pick up a modern one, like what do you like about the new ones and what do you like about the old ones?
Well, I like the old ones just from a headspace kind of a thing. You know, just the fact that it's a 50-year-old instrument. That's awesome. I really like that point. Some of the older instruments have a little bit heftier necks.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. On the guitars I build a heftier, thicker neck. And the newer instruments, of course, they're all smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is smooth on them. The older instruments, they've got things that kind of like, oh, you notice things that, you know, hang up, your things that you feel.
Yeah.
The newer ones, they're all nice and smooth.
Yeah. Tell me about maybe some of the, you know, experiences you've had. I mean, you must have dealt with a lot of artists or, you know, special guitars over the years.
I got a story about this one. Rosewood Telecaster. This is a new Rosewood Telecaster. George Harrison sent his Rosewood Telecaster back to the Fender factory because it was splitting apart right here.
Oh, right there, where the two pieces of wood
The two
come
pieces
together.
of wood come together. It was coming apart. So they sanded it all, they glued it back together, sanded it all down nice and smooth. I carved my initials inside the pickup cavity.
Did you ask anybody or just?
No, I just did it.
Does he know that? Do you think he knows it?
I don't know. I carved my initials in there and then polyestered over it. So that, you know, it's under a quarter-inch of polyester, so there's no coming back from that. That was back because the old ones were smooth, were gloss. Had a gloss finish on them.
Yeah. Tell me, like, maybe some of the more interesting instruments you've, challenging instruments you've worked with to kind of bring it back to life.
I had a Rickenbacker bass. It was a nightmare. The wiring inside, it looked like somebody had just grenaded the wiring inside. It was all messed up. And that was a very challenging instrument.
Yeah, I mean, people start to mod their own instruments and you never know quite what you're going to get.
That's always a nightmare when they do that. Or they come in with switches that were never there, you know, things like that. It's really kind of challenging to try and wire it all up.
Any other, like, you know, interesting, like, artist stories?
Well, you guys have probably all seen the Eric Clapton Strat.
Yeah, Blackie, yeah.
Yeah. Well, when Fender came out with a model, they wanted to come out with a Clapton model with the lace sensor pickups and all that kind of stuff. They built one and they sent it to Eric Clapton. And it was a cool guitar, had lace sensor pickups, but it had a switch to turn the active circuit on and off. And Clapton got it and he said, "Oh, take the switch off or take my name off. You choose." So he didn't like the switch at all. And then he came in here about a year ago and I talked to him about that and he goes, "Yeah, no, I didn't like the switch."
So Eric Clapton came into Guitar Center Hollywood?
Yes, he did. He came in here and hung out for a while, and we've had a ton of people. Billy Gibbons was here not long ago. I can't remember his name. Anyway, yeah, there's been a bunch of people. I also met a ton of people when I worked at Fender because they would come in low key. They would come in unannounced, kind of just them and maybe another person, and no hoopla, no announcement that they were coming or anything like that. And they come in and hang out. David Gilmour was there. I walk up and I go, "Hi, my name's Dave." And he goes, "Yeah, so's mine." I'll never forget that. And he hung out with us for like an hour, just there talking because
his guitar just went for 14 million, I think.
He was there looking at something, you know, an amplifier or something, and just hanging out. But it was just him. You know, he didn't have an entourage or anything like that.
Many people don't know, but Guitar Center owns Blackie, Eric Clapton's iconic Stratocaster. And Dave actually was just working on it this morning. It wasn't really working. What'd you do?
Oh, I cleaned out the switch contacts.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of corrosion on there and build up and fix that. But Eric Clapton comes into Guitar Center Hollywood. So tell me about that.
Well, he came in and I talked to him. I said, "You know, I have the guitar that they sent you as a prototype, the one with the switch on it." He goes, "Yeah, I didn't like the switch." And so
he remembered that.
He remembered that he goes, "Yeah, I don't want the switch."
Well, so what's interesting to me is, like, you know, Eric is known, you know, for playing Stratocasters, but he was pushing the boundaries of technology. So tell me about those, like the pickups he used.
Well, Don Lace came up with a pickup that doesn't really use big heavy magnets like a regular pickup does. And it's real quiet. There's hardly any hum or noise to it at all. That's why they call it the noiseless pickup. We were trying those out on a few different models, so they thought, well, we'll try it on the Clapton model.
Yeah.
Because the Clapton model had an active circuit, which gave it 12 decibels of boost. And that, of course, increases the hum and noise. So if you can get a pickup.
How did you access that boost? Was you just turning the volume up all the way, or was there a...
There was no push pull or anything. No, there was no switch of any kind. It just turned up.
Yeah.
And so you get that much boost, you have to get rid of the noise. So the noiseless pickups help that out.
Oh man, I love single coil, but I have so much EMF in my house that it's just unbearable.
Yes.
Yeah, and so anything you can do, any technology to reduce that hum.
I have a small Fender amp, Blues Junior amp, and I put a Jensen speaker in it. I could not believe the change in the amount of buzz.
Oh yeah?
Yes, it was like, you know, it got so much louder because the speaker is, I guess, voiced differently.
Yeah, and it's just picking up that frequency response.
Yes.
You were there for the restart of the American factory. You were also there for the launch of the Mexican factory.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I built the very first Mexico guitar.
You built the first?
I built it. because I
Wow.
was there to train the people how to build them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started the factory down there just from scratch. I started going down there once a week.
When was that?
Ooh, I don't remember the year. I do not remember at all. But I remember going down there, I'd spend a couple of days, I'd rent a hotel room
Yeah.
and then it started off.
So how do you build a factory in another country and make sure you're delivering the same standard?
Okay.
Or maybe it took you a while to get there.
We had a guy named Bashar Darkazelli. He was really strong-willed, and people didn't argue with him. Even the Mexican police down there and the Mexican officials, he told them what was going to happen. They didn't ask him. He told them. He was a really strong person, and that's how they got the factory going.
And what do you think of the quality of a Mexican-built Stratocaster or Squire today?
Okay, because of the design, they're very good because everything is cut and exact. The neck pocket is milled on a machine to exactly the right height. The pickup depths are always the exact right height. The thickness of the body is within 0.5 millimeter of the right thickness, always, because they use big machines that they run stuff through and they program them to make them all really good. And so everything that comes out of the Mexican factory is basically just as good as the Corona factory.
All right.
Because it uses all the same machinery and the same stuff. The only difference is maybe the pickups are a little bit cheaper, or maybe the bridge pieces, the bridges are, maybe a offshore made bridge instead of one that we stamp out in Corona.
And how much artisanship is still in like a Mexican built Strat or a US built Strat?
Well, everything is
because there's a lot of machines, but
there's
they're
a lot
also
of machines, but everything is still hand sanded.
Yeah.
And that's where you can make or break a guitar, because the neck shape, a few strokes of sandpaper, you can feel the difference when you play it. So those parts are very important to get right. So the hand sanding and the assembly, you have to kind of trim the paint away and stuff to make things fit.
Yeah.
All those little things
those
are
little
important.
details still matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things we're working on now at Guitar Center is building a new electric guitar.
Right.
And the brief I gave the team was, don't recreate the same thing everybody has recreated from the 50s and 60s. Like, technology has evolved a lot. Let's build something that is the best of the best, that could be innovative and future leaning, that could be your workhorse, right? That is not a replica of a 50s and 60s vintage product. What advice, having worked on pretty much every guitar and bass ever made, what advice would you give in terms of what should this thing be, and like how do you create something that is unique but is not so far out there that is alienating and disruptive, and like what should that look like?
Well, I mean, you don't want to rely on the old stuff, but a lot of the manufacturing techniques now are more exacting and more true, so you can get a better fit. And that's the whole thing now is fit and finish. You can make something really fit nice, really look good, because the paints and stuff are better. The painting processes are better. So you can make something look, and feel really good.
And how about just like body design? Because I don't think we should repeat what's been done, but like have something that is incredibly functional.
You kind of in a box there. It's kind of hard to make a guitar that's different than a Strat or Tele or a Les Paul. Those shapes have become so ingrained. It's really, anything else looks and feels odd.
But if you threw that out, what would you do? If you were to build something for yourself and you kind of got past that?
Well, for myself, I like more angles, sharper angles and stuff.
You're
like
more
that.
of a metal type.
Kind of, I guess. I don't know. I've built hundreds of guitars, but I kind of, as far as something that I like, to look at, because I've become bored with all of the
same old thing.
Same old thing.
And then what would you do for the componentry? Like, when you think of all the guitars you've played and seen, like what are the things you're like, oh man, every guitar should do this?
Single coil.
Back to single coil. Back to basics.
Never humbuckers.
Okay.
I do not like humbuckers.
And how do you deal with the noise?
Just play over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just there. It's just a component of the sound. So you just kind of deal with it. Yeah.
What else do you love?
Well, I really like I said, the in-between sounds on a Strat.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the combination of the two pickups.
Yeah.
Those are, pretty much what I have. Like I said, I've built hundreds of guitars.
So one of the things you've done in your career is you taught at Musicians Institute, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you are in that role, you're teaching the next generation of luthiers.
Yes.
So you're teaching the guitar makers how to make guitars.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
In fact, some of the people that I taught are now master builders at the guitar shop, at the Fender shop. Yeah, the Musicians Institute, we basically start off just chunks of wood, and we bolt together the wood to make a body spread, and we bolt together the parts and pieces to make a neck, machine a fretboard out. We had like the surface machines to make the sizes of the wood better. Just all the different parts and pieces to manually lay up a guitar, because a guitar basically is several pieces of wood, joined together.
How long does it take someone to learn to build a guitar?
Well, the program at MI was 6 months.
Okay.
And pretty much...
Is that pretty intensive, 6 months?
Pretty intensive. It was every day, 4 hours a day. And at the end of the program, they ended up with at least one, sometimes two guitars that they built. And they were, really nice guitars that they ended up with.
And are they, coming out of that, are they ready to go work for one of the guitar makers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because we have lectures that go along with the hands-on training. And you talk about, the different factories and how they work and what they do. And as you're teaching them how to do something, you explain how in a factory environment this relates to what they're doing.
So tell me about how Fender Custom Shop came about.
Fender Custom Shop, that was John Page, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Two guys. And they came out to Corona, and they occupied one of the other buildings next to the main factory. And the first thing they came out with, the first product, was a banjo with pedals. Yeah.
That was the first Fender Custom Shop?
That was the very
first. A banjo with pedals.
Banjo with
and where
pedals.
did they come up with this?
Somebody ordered it.
Huh.
Somebody came up with the idea and wanted it, and that's what they made. But then they actually started making, custom made guitars. People would come and say, I want it to be this color, I want it to be that color, and I want it to have humbucker, single, whatever the configuration was. John, and I can't remember his name, he's gonna kill me. But they would build it up themselves. And then they hired Fred Stewart, which is the third. And it kind of grew from there.
Yeah, and how many people will they have more or less now?
They've probably got, 70 or 100.
Crazy. Crazy how these things build. It's a huge part of their business.
I know they've got like 8 or 12 master builders now.
Yeah. So I'd love to just talk about, you've seen it all, every component, every guitar. As you think about the various elements of what makes a great guitar, I'd love to have you tell me the biggest innovations you've seen from, let's just start at the bridge, and we'll work our way up, right? But like, what are some of the things you've seen come along that you're like, oh yeah, that's like significant in material and a support?
There was a guy, he was also a guy that, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he designed a bridge. It's called a tectonic bridge. It's a wraparound bridge, like a Les Paul Jr. or something.
What does that mean, a wraparound bridge?
You know, the strings go in the front and wrap around, just go round over the bridge. This bridge is totally adjustable. It's a wraparound bridge that's adjustable with intonation, and it's adjustable with bridge height.
Okay.
Which is very innovative because a wraparound bridge is normally fixed.
Yeah. Why would you want a wraparound bridge versus true body or something else?
For me, they sound better. They have a more solid sound, and they don't have any when you bend the strings, the other strings don't get loose.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, you don't get that weirdness. And so I've always liked the sound of a wraparound bridge. And that's been a really innovative thing. Another thing was the Strat Plus bridge was also really cool because it was very adjustable.
So tell me about that one.
Well, it has the stainless steel sections, which make a good sound, and they're adjustable both in intonation, height. The whole entire bridge is adjustable. It's just it's a very flexible bridge.
Okay. And we talked a little bit about pickups, but like, what have you seen? And I know you love single coils, but what have you seen that really has pushed the bounds on pickups? I mean, from the original single coils and humbuckers, like what has been that next big step?
Okay, for me, the next step there is the one it's a P90 and a single coil together, P-rail. That's what it's called.
P-rail.
To me, that is really innovative because it sounds really good. It sounds all three positions, the combination or either one.
Yeah.
They sound, you know, you get three good sounds out of it.
All right. And a lot of flexibility.
A lot of flexibility there. And I'm more of a mellow player, so I don't need the overdrive like a humbucker and stuff like that.
So let's kind of, you know, move on to like the neck. Like there's been a lot, I mean, thick, thin, you have your preferences, CV, like how does this all settle out? Like what's the...
Okay, here's a really good innovation that Fender came up with, the American Standard neck.
Yeah.
It has a thing in the middle, which makes it a biflex neck.
What does that mean?
That means you can correct for underbow, or you can correct for overbow. You can go backwards because some necks, eventually they'll end up either too straight or a little slightly overbowed. You can't correct that with a regular neck.
Right.
All you can do is loosen the truss rod and that's it. You're done. This one, the truss rod actually backs up against the plug and will pull the neck down. It has a keeper in the middle that wraps around the truss rod and will actually pull.
How often do you see that in your life where something actually does bow too far?
I see it here all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. A lot of these vintage instruments, I back the truss rod off, it's totally loose and the neck is totally straight. So what I have to do is put on some heavy gauge strings, tighten them up pretty tight, and let it sit for a while to kind of push a little bit of bow into the neck and then string it up normally.
Yeah.
Because you have nothing left.
And then how about the nut? Like one of the things that, one of the challenges with the nut is when you're tuning, the tension on either side of the nut gets offset and then you play and it goes clink and then now it's out of tune again. Like this is a significant challenge.
Yes. One thing, use a real bone. That's the first step. And then
what does that do for you?
It just seems to not hang up like you're talking about.
A little less friction.
A little less friction, and you can round over the edges a little bit better, and it'll make a string slide nice and smooth. And also, if you can make it less of an angle, so that it's just a slight amount of angle and goes straight to the tuning key, it won't hang up as much when you tune. If you have that little ridge in the very front, the winds of the string will tick across that.
Yeah, and there's nothing more annoying when you're trying to tune a guitar, keep it in tune. And how about the actual tuners? Do you like locking? Do you not like locking?
Locking tuners they're just more convenient.
Yeah.
They just make it a little bit easier to reinstall the strings and stuff like that. As far as anything I don't use a tremolo arm all that much. So that would be the only time is when you use a tremolo arm, the strings loosen up on the peg and they don't tighten up in the same place.
Right.
So if you have a locking tuner, you don't have any winds.
Yeah.
The string is just barely wrapped around the tuner. So it loosens up, comes back in the same spot. So that's the advantage of locking.
And how about
tuners.
tuning ratio or the gear ratio?
I like a fine, fine
Yeah.
ratio.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like
a lot easier to tune.
all that like overshoot with just a tiny little. It's so annoying. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. The vintage keys are annoying in that respect. They're like 8-to-1 or something, and you have to come up to it. You can't go down because there's a big gap.
Yeah.
So.
And bolt on versus glue on, versus like through body. Like, what do you?
For me, bolt on is just as good as a set neck.
Yeah. Because
once you bolt it on there and bolt it tight, it's joined to, the wood is the same piece of wood.
And it doesn't have more flex in it?
No. Once it's tightened down, it's tight.
Yeah.
Also, you can't replace a neck on an SG or something like that. And believe me, I've had plenty of them that you throw the guitar away because the neck is no good. And it's horrible.
Yeah.
You can take the neck off and reset it and do all that kind of stuff, but the value just plummets and all that kind of stuff. A bolt-on neck, you get a new neck, bolt it on, nobody knows. It's all good.
Look, you work here at Hollywood. This is one of the most iconic music stores on the planet. If you could walk out there today and grab any guitar and take it home, what would you grab? The
guitar the guy was playing this morning with the 2 P90s.
Oh yeah.
Yes. That I love P90s. Okay.
That was
great pickups.
That was a Les Paul special. Yeah.
That guitar sounded
P90s.
Awesome. And it's a beautiful guitar too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be the one I would take home.
Yeah. That just had a gritty rock and roll feel to it.
Okay. I got to tell you a story. I had a guitar in my rack at Fender that I kept there for a long time, had a real thin neck. I really liked it. I played it all the time. We had a guy, who's the guy, the guitar player for Jefferson Airplane. He came into the factory and he was trying out some different guitars. So I said, here, try this one. And I handed him my guitar. He played it. That's the guitar he bought and took home.
He bought your guitar? Was it for sale?
It wasn't really for sale, but it was a factory, it was on the production line.
That was standard, yeah.
They just sold it to him.
Tell me about, there's an incredible amount of vintage product that comes through the doors here. Anything that's stuck out to you as being, special or remarkable?
They're all nice. It's hard to put a finger on any one because every one of them just has something that's makes it cool. Either the genealogy that goes with it, the stories, or just the fact that it's a beautiful instrument. The old instruments are still around for a reason because they're beautiful.
Well, the crazy thing is these were made 50, 70 years ago. Some of the guitars you built, are out there today. Almost all of them, right, are out there today, and most of them in great shape. These things can last centuries.
Yes.
They're really incredible quality. And, vintage product comes through the doors here. Not only is it still in remarkably good playing condition, but it just has all that history, and you can almost just feel it when you pick them up. There's history in each one of them.
There is a feel to them. There is definitely a feel when you pick up an old vintage instrument that's in good. It's just there's a magic.
Yeah, and some of them just feel so special. So Dave, legendary career at Fender. You retire. How did you get involved with Guitar Center? You don't need to be here. Tell me what happened.
I moved up to Oxnard because I worked for Guild for a short time. And that didn't work out. I'm not really an acoustic assembly person. So I started doing repairs in my garage up in Oxnard, and I went to Guitar Center to get some strings. And I said, yeah, I do. Oh, you do repairs? Johnny Rocket was the manager up there. And he said, "You do repairs?" And he said, "Can you show me, that you can do it?" So they gave me a guitar and they messed it all up, detuned it and everything. And they gave it to me. And so I went through the thing and I measured it and set it all up, made it all play nice. And they said, "Oh yeah, that's good." The guy that was watching me, one of the customers, they go, "So what did you think?" He goes, "It was like watching a YouTube video." Because I've done it 1,000 times, 10,000 times at least. So for me, setting up a guitar wasn't really that big a deal. So I started working for Guitar Center in Oxnard. And I guess they needed a repair person down here. And Johnny recommended me come down here, and they hired me for doing their vintage repairs here.
All right. Well, we are grateful you're here. This has been an incredible conversation. Dave, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate you spending a little time with us.
My pleasure.
And if anybody has a really, really treasured instrument that you won't let anybody else in the world touch, Dave Maddux is your guy. Take it into Guitar Center Hollywood, and he will take incredibly good care of your instrument. All right, everybody, thank you. Until next time, hit that subscribe button. See you next week.